My dear friends, welcome to Killer Short Stories. What you will find here is a series of dark, chilling short stories that will give you nightmares beyond comparison of what you thought was horrifying. I add nature sounds along with ambient music to help you fall asleep, if you can manage. But beware, the audio is my voice telling you real, factual stories. If you want to share your personal horror stories, I'm just a simple email away. So grab your popcorn and a nice refreshing drink, and I hope you enjoy this audio. Be prepared for the absolutely true horror story that you are about to witness with your own ears. Volume 2, A Haunting. Dennis had never been a firm believer in the occult. That is why when he found the Ouija board in front of him, he took it as his new diversion. The board looked pretty unique, not at all like those one could find in a magic store. It had leather bindings all around it and stitches which held everything together. Dennis liked things which stood out, and he decided to keep it. There was nothing much to do in his family, as their family did not have much. What they had, they spent it on buying a house. The house came cheap. Its previous owners did not want to live there, as it was too far from the city and wanted to let go on the cheap. For Dennis's parents, this was the perfect opportunity to get the shelter that they needed. Both of their parents worked 2 jobs to support the family, and the option to get the house was something out of the blue. It was the second day in the house after they moved in when Dennis found the Ouija board. He knew he could not show it to any of his siblings. He had 3 of them. Lily, the little one in the family, Keith, who was a bit older than Lily, and Jessica, who was only a year younger than Dennis. The home that they bought was in Harrisville, Rhode Island. Dennis had a rough time about changing their home, as the new place was quite far from his previous school. He was about to be shifted in a new one. The idea that he had to make new friends haunted him. The transfer process was going to take a few days, and so Dennis had some time in his hand. The time he struggled to spend. That is why finding the Ouija board meant he could at least try something new, but he had to be careful, as no one could know. Jessica was the smartest one in the house. She was a good student and a keen observer. Something about the house did not feel right to her from the very beginning. It had to be how it looked, she thought. For the most part, the home was surrounded by dead trees and a pond. Jessica could not figure as to why all the trees beside the house crippled that way. The morning they got into their new home came as a barrier of bad news. Jessica had a pet parrot with her which she got as a gift from her grandmother. Came the morning she found the parrot dead in its cage. It appeared as if something attacked it. It was all bloodied. Jessica remembers clearly that its cage was shut, but when she saw that the parrot had its wings clipped and the cage door opened, she could not but blame her for her carelessness. Not a great start to the new home at all. However, things got even worse for her that night. She noticed scratches on the floor, as if something was dragged forcefully on it. When she went to sleep, she kept hearing noises all night. She heard children running all around her, and when that would stop, she would hear something scratch the wall, as if he was trapped inside. Dennis waited for the night. When everyone was asleep, he brought out the Ouija board in a room where he was all alone. On the back of it, it had clear instructions written on it. "Do not play this game alone," it said. There were a few more things on the back which Dennis quickly read. The board advised the players to keep playing until the end of the game, and if anyone wanted to stop, he had to bid the ghost farewell. In order to start the game, Dennis had to put a triangular pointer on the board, which allowed the spirit to move it. Dennis could ask questions to the spirit, allowing it to answer. Dennis had no one else to play it with, but he did not care, as he did not believe in the supernatural that the board insisted on. Just before Dennis could start, his hand went to the corner of the board. It had a nail sticking out of it. The nail was sharp enough to give him a cut, and a splash of his blood landed on the board. Dennis wiped the blood with the other hand and started to play the game. He said the words as instructed on the back of the board to start it. "Those of the dark, I command thee to come into light. Bless those who serve thee light, and curse upon anyone who live in the dark." Dennis waited for a few seconds to figure if there was any change around him. Although he failed to notice anything, he was not surprised. "So much for not playing it on your own," he thought to himself. He decided to go to the next step of the game. Dennis asked, "Am I alone?" For a while, nothing happened. Even the triangle-shaped object on the board did not move. Suddenly, a cloth, which was covering the mirror in the room, fell, all on its own. This startled Dennis. He went to the mirror to have a look. The cloth must have slipped down, Dennis thought. He covered the mirror once again with it. Dennis made his way back to the board, and that is when he saw something he was not prepared to see. The pointer on the board was not where Dennis had left it. It was right on top of the word which said, "No." Dennis could not quite remember what he had asked the board in the first place, but when it came back to him, Dennis was shocked. He sat beside the board and tried to move the pointer. He failed to do so. By this time, he had realized that something was wrong. "Do you mean harm?" Dennis asked. The pointer moved once again, and before Dennis could see where it was going, he started to have a vision. He was walking on the very premises of their home. As he entered through the front door, Dennis saw a dog chained to the gate. The dog was visibly scared, and when Dennis went near it, the dog tried to escape the chains. Dennis kept walking into the other rooms. In one of the rooms, he saw 11 bodies of children hung from the ceiling. Dennis was extremely scared, and he wanted to come out of his trance, but he could not. He kept staring at the bodies, even though he did not want to. What moved him the most was the fact that all of the bodies had their eyes open, and it seemed as if all of them were looking at Dennis. When he looked around, he figured it was the same room that he had started playing with the Ouija board. He even found the mirror, which was covered. He looked at himself in the mirror. His face was distorted. There were two ghostly figures standing at his back. When he looked carefully, he noticed that one of the figures had its feet turned backwards, as if someone had broken it and turned it the other way. Dennis closed his eyes. As he did so, his skin started to burn. He opened it once again to see a woman in front of a bowl full of blood, performing some sort of a ritual. As she chanted some words, the blood in the bowl boiled. The lady threw in some hair in the bowl. Dennis could see a weird smile on her face. Then the lady poured the blood inside the skull of an ox. She drank the blood from that as if it was nothing. Dennis wanted to escape the place, and finally he could move at his will. When he turned back to run away, he saw those children who hung themselves. Their eyes were all white, like they had been possessed. One of the children came and held Dennis's hand, and his hand burnt. He could see the child slowly transforming into a man. She was growing so quick that Dennis did not even try to move away. He looked back at the mirror. In the mirror, he saw the girl. Her face was very different from what Dennis could see in real life. In the mirror, Dennis saw a witch who had big nails and burnt skin. Her eyes were filled with molten glass. And in real life, Dennis saw the girl take the shape of Dennis himself. As the girl took his shape, the other children walked to the lady who was casting the spell. One of the children was buried alive inside of the walls of the house by the lady. By this time, her face too turned into that of a witch. On her face were engraved some letters in a language unknown to Dennis. The child who was buried in the walls started to scratch the walls from inside to come out. Dennis saw enough. He understood that the Ouija board was not an ordinary one. He ran downstairs and tried to find a way out of the house. After running around for a while, it struck him. All the rooms that he was entering was the same. Finally, he gave up and fell on the floor. The witch was standing in front of him. Before he could do anything, the witch made an upside-down cross on his forehead with blood. Dennis woke up the next morning. In front of him was the Ouija board which started all of this. As soon as he opened his eyes, the horrors of the night came back to him. He pushed the Ouija board away from him and looked at his hand. It was not burnt, but it did hurt. He looked around the room. He could not find any mirror in the room. Dennis ran out of the room and went downstairs. That is when he saw something that killed him from the inside. His entire family lied dead in front of him. Lily and Keith were hung from the ceiling. Their bodies were bruised as if someone had taken out their anger on them. As for Jessica, she was dragged out of her room. Her scratches on the floor could be seen from a distance. Jessica was stabbed by the broken pieces of glass from the mirror. Dennis did not see his parents among the corpses, but he did not hold much hope. He went to the master bedroom to find his parents lying cold on the bed, their lips and nails all blue, suggesting that they had been poisoned. What really scared Dennis was that all of them had their eyes open, and it had molten glass inside them. The police investigated the case, and it was obvious that Dennis was behind all this. However, Dennis never pledged guilty of his crime. He could never recollect himself doing all those acts of terror. As for his punishment, he was sent to an asylum as the court ruled that his mental state was not stable. He now stays in a condemned cell in the asylum, reliving that day over and over again.